Strange Adventures issue 12. Tom King writing with Mitch Gerrits and Doc Shaner on the art. This is the culmination. And I think what's so different to compare it to Rorschach, which we both talked about the final issue of that just a couple of weeks ago, is that this has a very different structure at the end to that, in that the last issue of Rorschach was very much the culmination of that book.
Yep.
Whereas with this one, I think issue 11 was the emotional culmination, and then issue 12 is, I would say, an epilogue, but more of the fallout of what the real culmination was.
I believe in film school they taught us this is the denouement. Like, this is the, as you just said, the fallout. It's the climax has happened, and this is what happens post that big moment. And yeah, so did I like this? Did I not like it?
Of course you liked it. Why wouldn't you like it?
Yeah, why wouldn't I like it? It's the first thing I read this week. I couldn't go into the shop, so I didn't have to wait to get up my physical copy. So I read the digital, and yeah, I mean, it's a Tom King 12-issue maxi. What else is there? He sticks the landing and does it in such a way that when you get to the last page, just the whole commentary that we had been talking about the whole time, right? You know, about this, the Shaner version versus the Gerrits version, and just for King to come out and put that out there, I think, you know, other people I've seen call it, you know, a little bit too clever, but I think it fit perfectly for what he was doing in the story.
I mean, yeah, ultimately it kind of takes this idea that the book's been doing for 12 issues and has Alana actually say it and, you know, talk about how everything that we go through, we kind of turn into stories in our heads to sort of compartmentalize them, and also try and like just process them and be able to actually, you know, lie to ourselves, to make sense of them, to just live with them. And the idea that this entire story's had this one big fictitious version, even if it is mostly based on truth, but there are, you know, little things here or there. There's the omissions, there's skewing of things to make it work, so that you can live with yourself. And that's kind of, you know, what this Doc Shaner version that we've had throughout the whole book's been. So to have Alana kind of say that and use it in a way that, you know, she's not like completely hateful of Adam in this final issue, even though she had to kill him in the last one. Right. There is kind of a more nuanced approach from her in terms of how she thinks of her dead husband, and still is kind of mad at Terrific in some ways for, like,
right. Well, because it's him pulling on this thread, right, is what ended up her husband dying, but it also ended up with her realizing the cost of war via her husband.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. It's like she's kind of mad that he pulled on the thread, but like him pulling on the thread does not change the fact that Adam lied to you and used your daughter as collateral. Like, you should still be mad at Adam for that. That's still exactly. That's still
it's not only, you know, it's the shoot the messenger type thing, and it fits very in with her character, which, you know, I thought she was kind of sinister the whole time, and I feel, you know, just the femme fatale version of her that we get in Gerrits' art. But come to find out, she's still, you know, yeah, she's a princess on this planet and she has these duties, but, you know, at the end of the day, she's still kind of, for all the war she's been through, she's still kind of a pure soul, right? Unlike Adam, like, she didn't have to. Adam gave over his soul so she didn't have to, and that's the vibe that I got, and that's why she looks at him, you know, like, yeah, she's upset and she had to kill him, but she understands why. Ultimately, and, you know, I guess it's her version of justice there at the end.
I mean, I think the point is, though, is it's more complex than just there's good and bad and all those things. It's a lot more nuanced than that, and I think it's hard to just boil down into a simple sentence how she feels about Adam by the end and how she feels about him, you know, after his death. But yeah, the story is her and Terrific going to the Pict to get her daughter back, and her being kind of badass and shooting the Pict in the head when he doesn't give her over right away, which leads to a big action sequence that we don't even really see most of. It just kind of starts and we go back into more sort of happy times, and it's basically the final adventures on Ran before Adam would say, hey, I think we're done here, why don't we go to Earth, you know. It's him presenting it in a way, it's like it's a fresh start. Oh, you know, this planet reminds us of our daughter. In reality, we know it's because he's made this deal.
He made a trade.
Yeah.
So he made the trade. and whatnot. And yeah, I love the moment with Mr. Terrific where he said, you know, that this happened a lot faster than I had calculated. When she shoots the pick. So just that the fact that he can even be off his game when Alana's involved, I did kind of like that.
Yeah, and there's kind of a, you know, the art I think is maybe at some of its best when we do actually just we cut to their daughter. We cut to Aaliyah, and she's wearing Terrific's jacket, like he's put his jacket around her.
Yep.
And we don't see that happening. We just cut to her and she's wearing it around her shoulders. And Alana's trying to explain, and her daughter asks for a hug, and it's all very kind of awkward. And you know, and I think that's neatly plays into what she goes on to say later to Terrific, because when she sort of describes who Terrific is, when she asks, she says, "Oh, he's this friend, he's a hero who was able to like help find you," and you know, and her daughter goes, "Oh, he really is terrific then," and Terrific kind of smiles, and she goes over and asks Terrific for a hug. But that's not how Alana feels about Terrific, and she makes that very clear later on. But again, this is her turning it into a story that her daughter can understand and process and live with. So it's kind of a sweet moment, even though there's maybe... Well, there's a lie in the sense that Alana doesn't believe this, even though to us we're kind of like, well, this is pretty accurate as far as we're concerned.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but you know, it adds back into that theme of the lies we tell ourselves to kind of make things work and keep going.
Yeah.
So, and some gorgeous art, you know, when they make the choice to move to Earth and they have that full page kiss, and all that, and the trainer art. And Alana, you know, at the end of the story, decides that she is not going to be staying on Earth, but she's also not going to be living on Ran full time, because her daughter will not be safe on Ran, because because now that they've lost the war with Earth, they're going to attack Ran for revenge, because the deal fell through. She has to be there to help fight that, but her daughter will not be safe there, so she's going to be on Earth, and Terrific's going to have to look after her. And he's like, wait, what? And
I can't take a kid. Are you kidding me? I don't understand children.
And this is where she makes her big speeches that we've been kind of alluding to. But she does point out, I really like the touch that, you know, Earth's the one place that beat the Pict, so it's actually the safest place from the Pict now. Right.
And it's like, you know, the fact that like Ran had this multi, you know, well, it feels generational at this point, war with them. But, you know, on Earth, all those superheroes, and you have Mr. Terrific, and you have Batman, and all these other heroes that play a factor. It's not just Adam, you know. It's a world full of people like Adam. So I do like that it's, you know, real good. But, you know, as she explains to him, too, is like, this is kind of all your fault. So therefore, and I wouldn't want her to be with anybody else than you.
He sees this for what it is. He sees that she's spinning this, so she's doing her, you know, her almost politician thing of spinning it into the story, and that's when she kind of says, you know, they're all stories. That's how we learn to live with things. But she actually gets, you know, properly emotional as she's describing this, and describing how Terrific's been able to move on from his wife's death and his family's death. And she's kind of, you know, she's got tears running down her face as she's saying, that's your story and you tell it beautifully. Do you know how my husband died? You never asked. And, you know, he says, oh, you know, he killed himself. And she's like, no. And we actually, you know, cut back to a full page of him holding her, you know, her holding Adam's dead body, and like, just the blood all over the floor. And it's just this horrific, like, full page spread. And it's like, no, this is the reality. This is the truth of what happened. And the end of the story is we go back to the past. Well, it's not quite the end yet, but we go back to the past, and it's Alana finishing up the first draft of the book that obviously he was shilling way back at the start of the story. Yeah,
so she ghost wrote it.
Yeah, and the final scene is where we started. It's him sitting down for the book signing. I am glossing over a terrific scene, though. There's a really nice touch here where Aaliyah is now the one asking the questions for Terrific, the trivia.
As he's lifting weights, which is where we first saw him at the beginning, you know? And I think it's the same person. I think it's still about W.E.B. Du Bois. So that was real good. But this whole thing, to go back to the Terrific and the Alana saying that he needs her because his story is that one of how he overcame grief and she's intimating it's kind of a lie. Like, he still grieves, he's not over it, and this, him having to be this guardian now for this girl is what he needs to properly move on, and so I do like that balance here.
Yeah, no, it's a really nice final scene with Terrific. Actually, it's like I wasn't really sure what the narrative end point for Terrific was going to be in this book, given that the story's not really been about him too much. But
right?
he has had actually this nice little arc sort of buried within everything else. But the sad part of the ending of this, where it just ends with the Shayna art version of him saying, "My name's Adam, can I sign a book for you?" Is just, it's kind of heartbreaking, because it's like, ultimately this is where it's going to become the reality for us, because that's where we started, and it's just like it all went downhill from
right
here.
But it's like, remember that version is still all glossy, right? So like, what is the story going to become? That's how I took it.
Oh sure,
right?
yeah, obviously, yes, that now it's in Shayna art versus when we first saw him doing this, it was in Jared's art,
right?
Way back in issue 1. But it's very impressive that they were able to do this, and for me to remember how that issue 1 started and get the connection, because there's a lot of books where if you try to reference something that happened 12 issues ago, this specifically, that I might not quite get it.
Well, and with the delays that the pandemic caused with this book too, for us to go back even further, not just the 12 issues, but in time, it's really skillful storytelling on all parts here.
Yeah, and I really just, obviously this is the last hurrah we get to talk about this particular combination of talent on this. So I think all the stuff on the ships with Alana and Terrific, and all the, for lack of a better word, lens flares and that kind of stuff, and the sort of the depth of field effect that's going on, I love how overwhelming all of it kind of feels, because the whole idea is they're in the real world, so it's overwhelming, right? And whereas you get to the flashbacks, you get to the the Doc Shaner ideal version of the past, and everything's very clean, everything's very easy to comprehend and swallow, everything.
I mean,
nice
there's
and bold.
A sand monster, right? That is clear as day, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, like, you see the form of it. It's very cartoony, and it contrasts with that overwhelmingness in the other half of the book.
It's like, even in the that final scene with Terrific and Alea, like, it's still the Gerard's art, and it's still overpoweringly bright, but it is a bright future. It does feel, it's yellow and warm, and it's welcoming. So even though it's still got that kind of harsh real world, that we have to sort of like live in this world kind of feel to it, it is a lot more uplifting looking than a lot of the other Gerard's art that has been in the book. So there is still kind of a hopeful tone, like, going forward. Like, yeah, and this is maybe what Terrific needs. This is maybe what Alea needs, and they'll both be better for this pairing that they've kind of had thrown on them. It's kind of nice. I think, I don't know if we've made that specific like analysis on the difference between their art before, but it really kind of just, I felt it as I was going through this. Maybe it's just because all the stuff on the ships and them and Picked, and they were really like amping up the effects more in this one, perhaps, because it is the finale, because it is so this emotional climax. But I was really feeling the difference in this one, in that particular way. But no. Wonderful. It's wonderful.
No, I have nothing more to add outside. I can't believe how well they stuck the landing. Like, I said that with Rorschach, right? But that was a murder mystery that was very fulfilling. That they always aren't. But with this, the way that they weave the two stories together, and how the past from the first issue, that was reality, or the present that was a reality is now the past, and now it's being told in this idealized way. I was like, oh man, goddamn.
Yeah, even everything we saw in this is going to become a story in some way.
Right.
Honestly, like, if you ask me right now, like, I think the three big King books at this point, I mean, no, I've not read some of the stuff from beforehand, but going from Mr. Miracle onwards, Mr. Miracle, this, and Rorschach, you ask me what one I think is the best. I honestly, I would have to really think hardly about how I rank those books, because they're all exceptional in their own way.
They're so different, right? Yeah, the vibe on each of them is different.
And they all
I'm
feel
very partial to Rorschach still, though, just because that's
sure.
more my type of vibe. But I would have a hard time ordering them. Like, I just thought about it when you were saying it, and I don't know what I could put at number one.
And they all have
Yeah.
something to say, but they all have something different to say. So it's a very impressive. Like, his list of work at this point is really starting to look very impressive when you consider all these like 12-issue hardcovers or whatever you can recommend to people and say, no, this is just a great work on its own. You don't have to. I mean, maybe some basic DC knowledge of some of the stuff from beforehand is useful because they are fairly. Yeah, they're fairly. It's not Batman and Superman we're dealing with here. We're dealing with Adam Strange and we're dealing with Mr. Miracle and whatnot. But they're also pretty standalone. So as long as you have a basic understanding, maybe Rorschach's the easiest one because it's easy to say, hey, read Watchmen because you should, but then read this too as your follow up. So it's hard not to just be kind of gobsmacked by just how high the quality is here. So yes, is it the emotional high point that issue 9 is, or not issue 9? Sorry, issue 11. No, but does it feel like it puts a nice bow on a really strong creative point that it's trying to make, and feels like it leaves you wanting more work by Tom King, Gerrits, and Doc Shaner? Yes, it does. It very much does. So, yeah. What you giving it, Matt?
I'm gonna give this a 9.5. Like, it's almost perfect. But yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll probably just give this issue on its own a 9. But if you're asking me, and we don't do this for other books because they're ongoings or whatever, but if you're asking me, what do I give this 12 issues run, this book, if you're handing someone the trade or the hardcover or whatever, like, it's a 10. Like, this is a 10 out of 10 12-issue story.
Yeah, it's that good.
That's how I feel about it.